Imagine this. You're going in to meet a heart surgeon who has to perform life saving surgery on someone that you love. And they walk out of their office wearing a daggy old grey tracksuits with holes in the knees and a worn, dirty sneakers and grotty fingernails. Then you sit down and they begin to tell you all the intricacies of the surgery and what's involved in the operation and how much it's going to cost. But as they're talking, all you can think about is, why is this well respected heart surgeon dressed like a homeless person? You expected them to come out in scrubs or a white coat looking professional. Then you start to begin to evaluate their skills and their ability and whether you can even trust them to do the operation. Not to mention, you were so distracted by thinking about all these things that you didn't hear a single word that they said. Well, appearances matter. And in business, you've got about 7 seconds to make a first impression, because your reputation is based on other people's perception of you. Now, if you're going out to meet someone for a client meeting, you're going to wear what's appropriate for your industry. You're likely to meet in, say, a nice cafe that's quiet so you can discuss business. You're not going to suggest to meet in a dark side alley, like standing by a smelly dumpster bin. So, when it comes to presenting on Zoom meetings, what impressions are you making? Now, I'm not talking about what you're wearing, I'm talking about the environment that you're presenting in. If you do discovery calls, client coaching, online presentations, or webinars, your setting and the gear that you use or don't use is forming that impression of you. Your credibility, your likability can enhance or distract people. Now, I think about this book that I've read called Unreasonable Hospitality, and Will talks about this in the book, where he says people come in and they don't know why they feel uncomfortable. They don't know why they feel, you know, um, so at home or relaxed. And these are the subliminal messages that we send out when we present ourselves or people come into our environment. So this is, and I'll even relate it back to dating. Like if a guy has got a photo up and their photo is bad, as human beings, we scan the photo for the background to give us any clues that we can, like, have to give us more clues about that person. So, what does my Zoom meeting say about me? It might not be obvious to you, but it can be so distracting for that meticulously organized OCD person that all they can see is that crooked picture in the background, and that's what they're obsessed with. It's the backdrop, not what the valuable information that you're sharing. So, here are 5 mistakes that many people do when they're doing a Zoom meeting or they're doing a video stream. And I'm going to share with you also the ways on how you can level up so you look more professional and elevate your credibility. So, the first mistake that I see people make is audio issues. Audio issues come from different things. So, for example, you might have echoes or reverberation, background noise. Your room might be not have great acoustics, or you're not using a microphone, or worse, you're using headphones, which create a lot of that echoey, tinny noise that I hear a lot of people make when they're doing, live streams and in Zoom meetings. So good audio is that's why it's number one, is really, really important. Now, you don't need to spend a lot of money on good audio. In fact, I covered that in one of my live streams on Instagram over the last week, where I compared a $39 microphone with a pro mic. And it's more about, it's not what you have, it's how you use it, is what I'll come back to. So I would much rather see you use a $39 microphone from Kmart that you can plug into your computer. And if you are doing a video podcast or you're a guest on someone's podcast, please do not use your little earphones or earbuds that come with your phone. Those headphones are not a microphone. So please do your host a massive favor and go and spend $39 or $15. You can buy microphones really cheap. To be able to record quality content Because when that host is inviting you onto their podcast, they want to be able to repurpose that content and share it across different platforms and multiple ways down the track. And they can't do that when you don't have good audio. And I say this often, people will watch and tolerate bad video, but when it comes to audio, they will switch off. So, what are some of the ways that you can improve your audio? So, if you are doing a lot of online meetings, say you do online coach and you've got an online course, and you're doing a lot of face to face meetings on Zoom, invest yourself into a simple microphone, like, you know, with a boom arm. If you have floorboards, think about putting a rug underneath you. Go into a smaller room to record, for example. It'll make a huge difference to the quality of the audio. So that's number one. Number two is bad lighting. And I think this is probably one of the biggest things besides bad audio that I see people do is have bad lighting. What does it do? Well, it makes you look like you're in the dark side alley. and and it's like, and so it will make you look washed out, it'll give you shadows, it will age you, and it's just an unflattering look. And so it is really important to think about your lighting when you are doing online content, because the room that you're sitting in, you might think is light when you put the light on. But when you actually go to record video, and that's why when you see people making movies and TV, they always have studio lights, because with video, you need to up your lighting. Now, at the moment, I've got lights all around me if you're watching this video podcast, and that is because I want to make sure that I can have the best quality lighting again so I can repurpose content. Now, when you do a lighting setup in your office, for example, I talk about the 3-point lighting system. So that is having one key light, which is just to the side of you and just tilted up, looking down on you a little bit. Okay, so that's your brightest light. Now, most people just have one light. If you go and have a ring light, for example, they have it facing directly at them, and that's okay, but it can make you look really washed out. And if you've got glasses on like me, you often get a lot of reflection there. So the best way is that if you are creating content on the go, and I've covered and I've made videos on this in the past about that, is if you've got a little ring light, for example, stick it to the side and then just tilt it up at you. And that will help to reduce that reflection, but it'll also give you better light. Now, what I would suggest then is, rather than just having one ring light, get two ring lights, because a lot of the time the backgrounds that I see, or rather the video that I see people make, is they have one bright light and then one half of their face is in dark. And that's because they don't have a fill light. So you just want to place another light to the other side of your cheek. And that way you've got your key light and then your fill light just to fill in that shadow. And then, of course, if you've got a lamp behind you, then you can have a hair light or a backlight. You want to uplight the background as well. And what that will do, so at the moment, actually, I haven't even turned on my my backlights, because I've been recording all day and I turn my lights on and off. But I have a lamp on at the moment, and if you have some backlights, then it'll just help separate you from the background and define your background and your backdrop as well. So think about having a 3-point lighting system. If you want more information on that, you can head over to my Instagram page, and there's posts on there for that. And I'll also put a link to that in the comments in the show notes. Lighting as well. If you do have an office, one of the mistakes I see people make is they've got a pretty background. They might have an ocean view or a pretty landscape view, and they will position themselves with their camera facing the view. And what happens then, you ended up getting washed out because the background is brighter than the light on your face. So if you do have a pretty background, you need to make sure that you got more lighting on your face than what's coming in at the background. And of course, the way around that is to face your window and not have the view, or even just on the side is another way of doing that. So you need to make sure the light is on your face as opposed to behind you, the prominent light, I should say. Okay, so the next mistake, number 3, that I see people make is distracting backgrounds. Now, I have been guilty of this. I'm and put it up my hand, and in fact, I've just refreshed my background because I had a beautiful oil painting that I had to move out of one of my bedrooms and put in my office because I already had the hooks there and I needed to move things around, but it just didn't work as a backdrop because of the where my camera angle was. So it was always just a little bit like it was eye level, and you couldn't see the picture. All you saw was this tiny little bit of a frame. So it didn't belong. I took it out, and now I've just stripped everything back, and then I'll rebuild my backdrop again. But it's better to have less in your background than more. If you have a bookcase in there, have a think about what can you remove or tidy up in your bookcase. If you have a bookcase on there, think about adding some little lights, just again to give a little bit of a backlighting, which will help to make your environment look more professional. Now, I know that we have, green screens that we can use now, and that's fine. Although I think we can do better. A fuzzy virtual background is okay if that's all you've got. But if you are doing regular, and this is what I'm talking about, if you are setting up your home office where you are doing regular coaching calls, presentations, webinars, meetings, then think about what your backdrop looks like rather than just putting on a really hazy blur effect or some fake background, because it really does make a difference to the professionalism that you're trying to convey, because essentially this is your office. This is like people coming to your office in person. And the biggest no-no I want to say is that if you have a bed in your background, please don't. I know everybody did it over, 2020 and everything, but please do not have a bed in your background. If you have to broadcast in your room, in your bedroom, then turn your computer around and face your bed. And that way, the background for the people are looking at a blank wall or a wall. But please do not ever have your bed in the background. A lounge is fine. If you're in the lounge room, I think that's more acceptable. Just be mindful of things that are in your backdrop. Do you have things that point out of the back of your head? Do you have crooked pictures on your wall? They can be really, really distracting. So just have a look in your background and see if you can clean it up. And the best way to do that is just go back and look at your previous Zoom meetings and rewatch them. And that's how I constantly always fine tune my lighting, because often I record late at night or very early in the morning when it's dark. So I have to really up my lighting to make sure that I'm not in shadows everywhere. All right, so number 4 mistake that people make when they're doing Zoom meetings or video streaming is unflattering camera angles. Now, this is one of the oh, look, they're all big. I know I've said that. Bad audio, bad bad lighting, distracting backgrounds, but unflattering camera angles really, really do make me just wanna say, "Hold pick up your laptop." Okay, so with camera angles, most of us are probably, coming, using the webcam on our laptop, and our laptop is on a desk. So therefore, we are looking down at the camera lens. Now, when we talk about videoing and techniques with camera angles, everything sends a subliminal message. So if you look at a movie, different styles of movies, if I want to convey a sense of dominance and an authority, the cameraman will shoot pointing uh, from the point of view looking down at the person. So therefore they have to look up. And so when you are using your laptop's camera and you are looking down at your desk at your laptop, it's like you are in a very dominant position, and it can be quite condescending. So the easiest fix for that is just get a box, pop your laptop up on there so it brings it to eye level. Really simple. Now, the other thing on the other end of the scale, a lot of people have webcams. And when you have webcams, again, you end up with a sore neck if you're doing Zoom meetings all day, but then you're looking upwards. And when you are looking upwards, again, it actually works in the reverse, where instead of having a dominant authority stance, it becomes the opposite, where you lose credibility, you lose authority. Because if you think about back in the movies, if you want to convey somebody who's smaller than you or younger than you that you're, they're in trouble and things like that, then of course their point of view is going to be looking up. So how to fix that? Again, if you have a webcam, look and see, does it have the option to do a multi-mount on there? Because if it has a multi-mount, you may not be able to, because a lot of people have their monitors raised up and they're on a stand. So all of a sudden your webcam is up here as opposed to here where I'm looking now. At the moment, I stream with my Sony E10 with the 16mm lens on it. So my camera is literally no more than my hand's arm's distance away. However, I sit it just at my eye level here, so I'm looking at you. So just have a think about your camera angle if you are using a webcam or your laptop for that, and just get it back to eye level. Now, the other thing that I'll say is that if you are doing more content and the majority of your business is done using online, then have a think about updating. And number 5 is using outdated webcams or poor quality cameras to broadcast with. Now, these days, our phone will give us 4K quality. Our laptops, like I've got a MacBook Pro, and the quality camera on that, the camera quality on that is actually pretty good. However, if you do want to level up your content, then have a think about how you can update your hardware that you're using to record video. So I went out last weekend and this was based on Members in Content Catalyst, which is my marketing hub membership. And we were talking about backdrops, because this month inside Content Catalyst, we were talking about tech and gear. And we did an audit on our backdrops and set up our studios. So little things make a huge difference, and often it's just a little tweak here and there of what you're already doing to maximize that space to get the best quality audio, video, and background as well. So I went out on the weekend and I got 4 webcams, and here are my reviews of those webcams. So I started with a $49 budget cam and I went right up to the top end, 4K quality. So let's have a look at what I rated and see which is right for you if you need to update your camera. So the first one I did was a budget $49 pick, which was from Officeworks. It's their house brand, which is their J Burroughs brand. I chose this one because it had 5 megapixels, which again gives you better quality with the resolution, and it was a 1080p quality. It had autofocus and a built-in mic. Now again, I'm not going to be talking about microphones in our webcams, because if you are doing Zoom meetings, please go and get your own microphone as opposed to relying on the microphones that are inside your webcam, especially if you're recording information that you want to be able to repurpose and upload into, your members portals, if you have a membership, or, share and repurpose ongoing. Don't rely on your microphones inside the webcam. So I won't talk about microphones. All these cameras that I'm about to tell you about do have microphones, but it's not something that I'm going to be rating on this one. So $49 does the job. I'm going to tick that off the list. The only thing, the downside of that was the coloring. I thought the coloring was lackluster. It threw a lot of purple hues in there. Next one I tested out was the Logitech Brio 500. It's a full HDR camera. It has 1080p at 30 frames per second, auto framing and light correction. Now, a lot of people recommend this webcam on gear guides that I've seen. And personally, this was my dud pick out of the 4. And the reason is I couldn't make it work. It would not load. I had to restart my computer 4 times. I did an upgrade on the software and it ended up causing me problems on that I couldn't get my other camera logged back in. So as far as that webcam goes, I strike that off the list, and that was $199. So the next 3 are Logitech. So the next one is the Logitech Stream Cam. It's a full HD streaming camera. I love this camera. It was $229, so it was $30 more than the Brio 500. But what I loved about this, it's 1080p at 60 frames per second. So all the others that I've told you about are 30 frames per second, where this is 60 frames per second. And what that means, it's just going to give you a lot more smoother content. It has an autofocus tracking. I can also mount it on a monitor on your monitor or on a tripod, which I really love. I can film vertical or horizontal. It's got dual facing mics, but it's optimized for streaming software. So this was like a great camera, and I definitely rate this out of all the webcams that I used. And the last one that I tested was the Logitech. So this was the top end of town of all them that I tested, and this was $329. And this was a Logitech MX Brio, and it's their 4K. It's only a new one out, and it is their the upgraded version of their previous 4K camera. And I love this. This was a 4K resolution at 30 frames per second, or if you have 60 frames per second, like the previous camera, the Stream one, the Stream Cam, it has 60 frames per second at 1080p. So in other words, you're going to get decent quality video out of these. It has some AI powered features in there, so they have some software. So if you go on and download their software where that you can adjust the lighting and the coloring. Now, I think what the biggest standout for this camera and why you would get this is because it's got a wide angle lens. So why would you want a wide angle lens? Well, let's say you had multiple people on camera. Let's say you were in a kitchen cooking and you wanted to have a 4K camera while you were cooking, and you wanted to show off your kitchen. That's, I guess, the reasons why I could think of why I would use those cameras, so I can mount it, on a tripod as well. However, I think it is a little bit expensive. It's a bit overkill, unless I needed that wide angle lens. So I would probably go out of my pick out of all the cameras was the Logitech Stream Cam, which was $229. I'll put all those details in the show notes as well if you want to know. So essentially, let's just recap. Here is, if you want to level up your recording space when you are doing Zoom meetings or video streaming, let's just look at assess your audio. If you don't have a microphone, go out and invest in a microphone that sits at your desk. And if you are using your headphones, like your little earbuds and things like that, again, think about upgrading that onto a specific microphone, because it will make a really big difference to the person on the other end. You may not hear it, but I hear it. And like I said, when it comes to the little things that people pick up on, they don't know exactly what it is, but they know something's irritated them. And so they're not listening fully to what you're saying. We want people to hear and absorb what you're saying. And the crisper the audio is, the more likely they are to take in the information. So that's number one, bad lighting. Go out. If you've got one light that's just pointed on you, go out and just get a little panel light or a ring light just to fill in that light, and or a softbox light. I prefer softbox lights because they're a lot more softer on on our face. Turn off your overhead light, because overhead lights, especially if it's straight on you, will give you bags. That doesn't cut the mustard as far as lighting goes when you are doing video. And no one wants to feel like they're meeting with you in a side alley. And just to talk about that as well, I actually watched a webinar the other day that the person was a streaming expert, and they had this person on talking about gear setup for desks. So they had this monitor set up, and they had a cable program to keep it all contained. Essentially, it looked amazing. But he was talking about this very subject, about having a professional setup. And he was in the dark because he had this black background, which was all sound acoustic boards. But the problem was I could barely see him, and it just bothered me the whole time watching the webinar. So that's why, instead of listening to what they were talking about, I was so focused on just that one thing where I just couldn't stop thinking, and I just wanted to say in the stream, going, "Your lighting sucks." It's like, so yeah, that you don't want people thinking about the problems in your setting. Number 3, distracting backgrounds. Just have a look at some of your previous recordings and look at how you can clean up your background. If you have wallpaper, the other thing about backgrounds, if you can, sit off the wall. Do not sit directly on the wall. You want a little bit of depth of field on there. And if you can, switch your office around, push your desk forward so you've got a little bit of room between you and the backdrop as well. Makes a huge difference. And then, of course, unflattering camera angles. Get your camera up or lower your camera down. Look at me eye to eye so we can have a conversation and feel like we're sitting at a coffee shop having a proper business conversation, as opposed to me feeling like I'm in trouble at school or looking up your nostrils. And then, of course, if your number 5 is if your hardware, your cameras are outdated, just have a think about, can you update your webcam to get something better? And you don't need to spend a lot of money as well. Look, that's all from me. The only other thing I'll add to it, and I didn't talk about wardrobe making first impressions. I'm going to grant that you know how what you need to wear on camera to make a professional impression, because just because you professional doesn't necessarily mean you have to wear a suit. You just need to dress that's appropriate for your industry, right? I work with a lot of winemakers and farmers, so if they wore a suit on camera, it'd be ridiculous. It's more about making those other settings impactful, because even when I said to you before about audio, like the worst thing that I drives me nuts is if you are streaming or doing a meeting in a noisy background and you've got people walking in and out of your setting. Go and find somewhere quiet. Go and sit in your car if you have to, because I cannot hear what you're saying while people are walking in and out of your camera. So just think about that as well, as far as a noisy environment. However, if you do want to know what to wear on camera because you're doing something more than, say, your daily, like Zoom meetings with people you're familiar with are different than the first time you want to make an impression. Let's say you're doing a webinar to sell something, or a masterclass. You want to think about what works for you. So colors have meaning. So block colors, wear something that's a block color. If you want to convey authority and trust, this is why we have, color theory with, branding, is because, colors like blue convey, trust and authority. If you're talking about fun and bright and sunshine, yellow, so have a think about the colors. Of course, seasons, like I went to put on my bright colored green and I'm like, no, I don't feel like, spring or, summer anymore. So I put on my winter green. I love caramels and I wear a lot of that in winter, but it doesn't necessarily convey well on camera. So I'll often change my jacket or my jumper or whatever if I am going to be doing a presentation. So yeah, avoid stripes because they do strobe. And sometimes I see presentations where people are wearing really busy blouses with prints on them and things. Keep it really simple. Block colors are best. Avoid your stripes because they strobe on camera. So there you go. There's my 5 mistakes to avoid to make your Zoom meetings more professional and make lasting first impressions, to level up your credibility and likability when you're doing business online via Zoom or Google Meet or StreamYard or whatever you're using to get your message across online. I hope this helps. If it has, what's your biggest thing that you're going to do as far as a takeaway? Go and do an audit on your backdrop. Get somebody else to look at it and give you feedback as well, because sometimes we don't see the forest for the trees, and just little tweaks can make a huge, huge difference, because at the end of the day, when you are creating content, you want to be able to repurpose it, get the best out of what you can. The other thing is, when you position yourself in camera, at the moment I'm shooting horizontal, if you sit yourself back a little bit from the camera as well, it gives you the opportunity to be able to repurpose it into vertical video and trim it up without your face being really close up in the, in your reel. So anyway, there's a few tips. I hope that's been helpful. If it has, please tag me on Instagram and let me know what was your favorite tip and what are you going to audit in your background. Thanks again for listening. Until the next episode of Content Catalyst.